Welcome back to another video in my 2026 college football preview series, and today we have finally entered the top four, and we'll be starting this off with the Oregon Ducks. Now for my top four, it was a very thin criteria, and honestly, you could flip any of these four teams and make an argument for them to be any of the positions, and I'd be fine with it. There was a time where I actually had Oregon at number one, until this clip dropped.
Sometimes Dante farts in the huddle, and we have like a little competition of who could fart.
But in all seriousness, I decided to put Oregon at 4 because I feel like they have one thing different than these other teams, and that's that they're replacing both coordinators, but we'll get into that. If you haven't seen one of these videos before, we typically started off like this. We'll go through their offseason changes, their coaching changes, their transfer portal additions, their transfer portal departures. Usually I won't highlight the third string offensive linemen unless they actually seem like a sleeper for the team. I'll go over their key additions, and then we'll get into specific players. We'll get into their starting lineup. We'll place these units into tiers. Specific draft eligible players will get a numerical grade, and that's because I've watched enough tape on them to feel confident giving them a grade as if I were giving them a draft grade for the NFL draft. But the tier system kind of helps with perspective for players where maybe the grade isn't as strong or I didn't have the chance to fully watch them. Then we'll get into the scheme because obviously this channel is called My Film Review, so we'll have to highlight the scheme and we'll talk about things that went right or wrong last year, talk about what needs to change, and for Oregon, we'll talk about what's going to change by bringing in some new coordinators, even though luckily, not a lot's going to be too different. If you're here for the scheme section, then I do have the timestamps in the description, so feel free to run right there. But we'll end it off with a schedule prediction where I'll go through and pick every single game on their schedule. For Oregon, we can dive right into the coaching changes. I don't really need to do a full season recap because there's actually stuff to talk about here, but just for the fans, I'll go ahead and glaze your team a little bit. Y'all were a very good football team last year with the emergence of Dante Moore, Dan Lanning kind of hitting his stride even into the playoffs, which is something that he hasn't been able to do before, but you won 2 playoff games. One of them was a blowout over JMU, which we can talk about whether or not they should have been in there all day long, but that's a different story. And then the Texas Tech win was legitimately a great win. That is a great win for Dan Lanning's resume. Even if the Peach Bowl against Indiana wasn't the prettiest, it does give you something to build on going into this year. Like I said, I have the Ducks at 4 because they are replacing Tosh Lupoi for defense and Will Stein for the offense, but they're replacing them with internal hires, and that can be good and bad. I think for Oregon, it's a good thing because both of these guys that they hired, which we'll get to in a second, have kind of been like groomed for this position, for lack of a better word. I mean, they've been prepared for it. It's been in line as a succession plan. Whereas other teams, they have to go out external because maybe they don't like the guys that are in the building. In the case of A&M, where they promoted Holman Wiggins, it's kind of more risky in my opinion, where I feel like they could have went out and maybe looked for a candidate. But for Oregon, with Dan Lanning, especially being the defensive coach, hiring someone internally just allows him to still run the same defense he was going to run. But it is different when you have someone new picking up the play sheet and actually being the guy who makes the call. And that goes for offense and defense. Like, you can be a part of the scheme all you want, but when you're the one it's 3rd and 2, and what play are you going to call? Or it's 4th and 1, are we going for it or not? And what are you going to dial up? I mean, yeah, part of that's the head coach, but at the same time, if you're the offensive coordinator, that's on you to have ready. So there definitely is some added pressure that comes with that. It's also a matter of culture and discipline. Are these guys going to be the same that Will Stein and Tosh Lupoi were? Are they going to be as bought into this Ducks culture, this Ducks program, this Ducks physical mentality that they play with? Are they going to be able to instill that in the guys the same way that Lupoi and Stein did? We'll find out. But I've talked all about this. Now let's actually get into who is going to be replacing them. On the offensive side of the ball, they'll be promoting Drew Maringer to be the new offensive coordinator, and it's no surprise that he got this role. He's been with the program for about 5 years now, where he was the tight ends coach, and if you know anything about Oregon's tight ends, that's kind of the room that you want setting the tone for the offense, so I actually have no issues with this promotion. On the defense, they promoted Chris Hampton, who's been the co-defensive coordinator for a few years now, and he was the full-time defensive coordinator at Tulane a few years back, so he at least has experience there, where Drew Maringer really doesn't. So yeah, both of them have experience, they have the scheme made for them, but like I said, they have not called plays for the Oregon Ducks yet, so we will see how that goes, and it's kind of the reason that I'm a little on the fence about where to put Oregon. So in a world where there's 4 incredible teams, that was the thing that made the difference for me. I'll round this out with a little anecdote about Dan Lanning, because I think it's worth getting on this social media platform that he's never going to watch and defending him, because some of the discourse online about Dan Lanning is just stupid. What he has done at Oregon has been amazing. Fans will call this year natty or bust. Oregon haters will point to the fact that Lanning hasn't been able to get it done despite all the money and all the talent. And I hate to break it to you, not every team is Indiana. Not every coach is Curt Cignetti. You look at some of the most successful college football coaches of all time, and at the time it took them to win their first title, and it was years. Dabo Swinney was 7-8 years. Kirby Smart, I think, was 7 years. Ryan Day was 7 or 8 years. Like, It takes time to build a program. No matter what, no matter where you come from, no matter who you are. And Dan Lanning is still one of the youngest of the successful head coaches right now, so he has plenty of time. Be patient with him, Oregon fans. Even if you don't win it this year, it is not natty or bust. I don't think that this team under this coach will ever be in a natty or bust situation unless he continues time and time again to lose the big ones, then we can talk about it. But I think the playoff success in beating Texas Tech last year gives you a little bit of hope that the moment isn't really too big for him. He's just gotten caught stumbling a couple times, and you have to build up those scars. I think you have to fail to succeed. Every coach has failed. Dan Lanning has failed. He will succeed. Now that I've gone off about this coaching staff, let's move on to their NFL departures. And they had some key people leave for the NFL, starting off with tight end Kenyon Sadiq. Sadiq was a slightly controversial player. A lot of people were kind of on the fence with him, saying he wasn't productive enough, saying he's too small, that he's just an athlete, not an actual football player. And to that I'd say, watch the tape. Sadiq was a fantastic blocker. Now, the size does cause a natural ceiling, there's no denying that, but for his size, he can do the damn thing. He is a very well-rounded player. He would make some of the most insane plays too, all over the field. Some of the catches were wild, like this leap here against Minnesota. I think he had a very similar play against Rutgers too. Obviously with the speed, he was a huge yards after catch threat. I think Oregon fans know how good Sadiq was, but I don't actually know if the general media does. I think they just hype up his 40 time and not talk about what he can actually do as a player. Next up is Dylan Thieneman, tied for my favorite player in their draft class with the next one we'll talk about. Thieneman lit the combine on fire, but I remember being a believer in him before the college football playoff. I thought he was an animal. It was zero surprise to me he ran that 4.3 40-yard dash. You can see the speed and how he can crash downhill. He's not just an athlete. He is a hard-nosed football player. He loves to hit. He plays physical. He wasn't like a world beater in coverage, but he was good enough. I think his playmaking in the box and just shutting down the hook curl and curl flat windows is what's going to be missed on this team, though, not necessarily his drop back reps. I loved Thieneman. I mean, I have a review on him from draft season on my TikTok. He is one of my guys, and I think he's going to thrive in Chicago and be a cornerstone of that defense for years to come, and we'll see how Oregon can replace him. And the same can be said for Emmanuel Pregnon. This was one of the biggest travesties in the draft to me. It was him falling. I had a fringe first-round grade on him. I thought he was really, really good, just so strong, so sound, just such a reliable people mover. There's not a ton to report on here. I think he's just exactly what you want in an NFL guard. He has the motor, he has the strength, he has the athleticism. I just don't see what I was missing here with him. Like, what is there not to like outside of his age? I think the Jags got a steal, and I'm excited to watch him play, and I really hope that I'm proven right. They have two more losses. One of them is Jaden Kennedy. He's an underrated loss. I think Oregon fans know how good he is, but the non-Oregon fans who are watching this might not know how good Jaden Kennedy was. He was the quintessential slot corner, just a really fun guy to watch. Very similar to D'Angelo Pons in that he's undersized, but just played with that dog mentality. It felt like he was all over the field when I was watching him, so it's not a loss to scoff at. I do think the secondary has enough talent returning where you're not going to sit there and reminisce about the days of Jaden Kennedy, but he really does deserve his flowers. Another my guy in the draft was Bryce Betcher. I loved his tape. I thought he was such a solid backer that I wanted to be on my team, the Buffalo Bills. He has that aggressive, doesn't care if he lives or die, gap-filling attitude. Were his eyes perfect? No. Was he perfect in coverage? No. But he was a die-hard football player. He grew up in Eugene, played both baseball and football at Oregon. The story of player development kind of reminded me of Michael Taft from Texas, just a hometown kid who became a star for his team through hard work and is now going off to the NFL. I think Betcher will most definitely be missed. The linebackers they have coming back aren't bad, but Betcher was a tone setter, and that's going to be hard to replace. Then they also had deep threat Malik Benson and football terrorist Alex Harkey drafted. So congratulations to him. If I was an Oregon fan, would not miss him. Malik Benson is a loss, but I think they're deep enough at receiver where it's not a huge deal. He did hit his stride with them, so I think it's definitely not a guy you want to see go, but he had his time playing college football. He needed to go. Then we get to their transfer departures, and Oregon did lose quite a few players to the portal numbers-wise, but there's no one on here that was like super impactful. There are some key depth pieces, especially along the defensive line, that would have made them better, but when we start talking about the D-line, you'll see why they transferred out, because they're just so deep at that position group. One of those guys is Tioni Gray, the massive interior run stuffer transferring to Notre Dame. Another one is Blake Purchase, who is a depth piece off the edge, but I said this in the Ole Miss video that I don't think that he was bad. It was just he was playing behind two studs, and he probably would have played more had they not been there, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in Oxford. And then also there was Jericho Johnson, who's following Tosh Lapoy to Cal, and Terrence Green heading down to Alabama. Terrence Green is probably the biggest on-paper loss. I think if there's one guy on that D-line that you wanted to stay, it's him. But the guys they have are just too good for him to be a starter, and I get it. You want to go down and get paid to play in the SEC, or you like your odds more, go for it. Most of Oregon's heavy losses were to the NFL and not the portal, though, and that's kind of been the common theme with these teams that I have ranked in my top 10. Shows they are good programs. They are retaining the players that they want, and the players that are leaving are going on to play in the NFL because they were that good and got developed at that school. Now let's talk about how they did replace some of those players, though, with the transfer portal, and we'll start to talk about Dontre Robinson. To replace the losses at defensive tackle, they went out and got North Carolina's starting man. He is 6'4", 315 pounds. He's got the size. They like him at the interior spot. I actually don't have North Carolina film somehow, so I'm unable to review him, but you get a Power 4 starter as your depth piece. You can't really complain about that. The biggest splash they made in the portal, though, was Coy Parrish, the safety from Minnesota. He's had kind of a shockingly similar career to Dylan Thieneman at this point, where he had a really good freshman season, a meh sophomore year, and now he's looking to get back to his freshman year greatness thanks to the scheme. Parrish was that cover one robber free safety role in 2024, and it kind of let him just kind of sit back, pounce on routes, sniff out the play. It's exactly what he'll be asked to do at Oregon. They're very similar roles. He had like 5 interceptions as a freshman, including a couple of game winners. I think the USC one stands out because this dude is just an athlete. Like, you can see the athletic and traitsy potential of Parrish stand out here. It's through the roof. He just needs to put it all together. That's what this highlight is here. It's the athleticism. It's the traits. I'll talk about it later, and I'll say it a lot throughout the video. What this team did with Thieneman as a center fielder last year is the perfect way for a guy like Parrish to shine, which really explains the transfer here. It fits his style to a T. He's not afraid to tackle, but he missed a lot of them in 2025. I think borderline top 10 in the country in missed tackle rate. That will not fly here. That has to get cleaned up or he will not see the field for this team. They value that too much. In coverage, he's fine. I think he gave up a lot of big plays because he did get greedy, which is why I say he should be better at Oregon, because the role that he's going to have is much simpler. It's the Dylan Thieneman role. If you're fast, you have good eyes, you aren't afraid to hit, you'll probably succeed. So I'm not insanely high on Parrish like the media is. He's definitely carried because of that freshman season, but I think a bounce back is possible. I think as the time goes on, people will realize just how good Thieneman was, though, and this is not a 1-1 replacement, but it is a ball of clay that you can mold, if you will. The other addition they made to the secondary was Carl Williams, the fourth from Baylor. He will probably get the chance to start at nickel for Oregon, and I wish I had more to go off of for him, but I really wasn't able to find much game tape since he missed the entire 2025 season with a meniscus injury. If it all works out, this will be the Jaden Kennedy replacement. I think he takes on blocks well just from watching some YouTube highlights of him. He plays physical. Most of the highlights I found, though, were him tackling, not in coverage, but I'm really not sure what to expect here since I just don't have tape on him. And then, shocker, I'm in a very similar situation with their projected starter at right tackle and Michael Bennett from Yale. This is what it says when I go to the Yale folder on Drive, so not making excuses here, I literally don't have tape. Now luckily, I did find a 3-minute video called Michael Bennett III right tackle highlights that I'll link in the description if you're a sicko and you want to watch the whole thing. From the looks of the video, he plays with a mean streak. I don't think we'll have any issues fitting in with this team mentality-wise. He's a very good run blocker, which also goes with what they want to do. I think he's good at making first contact, seemed to have a really good get-off, and he can just get under people's pads and drive. I do think his anchor and overall strength could use some development. He's 6'5", 300 pounds, so he's not small by any means, but in pass pro, I think there's just room to improve with his anchor. He pulls really well. Now, all of this was against FCS competition, but I think the intangibles that you look for are there. Now it's up to this coaching staff to get him to that top-tier play strength. I do hope he works out better than Alex Harkey, which was kind of a similar story, but we'll see what happens. The next transfer guy I'll cover is Iverson Hooks, the 5'10", 175-pound receiver from UAB. Hooks was really good there, over 900 yards as a junior with 7 touchdowns, playing in literally whatever the offense they ran. I mean, the football version of just hooting and hollering. I was able to watch him against Tennessee, and I thought he looked good against that level of competition. Nothing crazy statistically, just about 40 yards on 5 catches, but it's nice to know he has played that level before. Hooks reminds me of Jordan Hudson from SMU last year, just a smaller guy who plays bigger than his frame. He made a lot of nice catches at UAB, incredible concentration at the catch point. I can already see it now with him being a guy that Dante Moore just trusts on scramble drill. He'll be open and he'll probably come down with it. I think he fights for wide receiver 3 with Jeremiah McClellan, who is very talented in his own right, but we'll get there in a few minutes. I will briefly mention Marcus Dixon since Oregon does run a lot of 12 personnel and they brought him in to play tight end from Clemson. While he was there, he played tight end and defensive end, so he's kind of this like flex player, doesn't fully have a position yet, but I do think that he's going to end up at tight end. He had no catches in his career, so I don't have much to go on here, but I just know of him as a prospect, and I know there's a lot of intrigue here. And I think he's set to be their tight end too, if the depth chart is correct. So they must like what they see, and if there's a team I trust to develop tight ends, it's Oregon right now. That does wrap up the key transfer additions, though. Obviously, there are some guys here that I like a whole lot more than others, but I think overall they did a great job of bringing in players strategically, and ones that are going to see the field. They are starters. They're going to get playing time, so Oregon did a nice job in the portal overall. Now for the roster, let's kick it off with their quarterback in Dante Moore. And finally, a team I can talk about without a transfer quarterback. Moore has gone through quite the career during his few years in college. He started off at UCLA where he sucked, to be honest. Like, I remember watching him and just feeling bad for him though, not only because of him, but because of how bad UCLA was. But he transferred to Oregon in 2024, he waited his turn, and then he lit the world on fire in 2025. Him coming back to school really shocked me. I thought he would have been the second player off the board. I think that's pretty much consensus, but he turned it down to come back to Oregon, and I think a lot of that decision was probably based on getting thrown into the fire at UCLA as a freshman and realizing that that kind of sucks. It's better to go and develop when you're ready to play, that's when you go play. He throws with some of the best touch and ball placement in this class. I think him and Darian Mensah are at the top of this, so we'll focus on that. There are throws in this tape that are just beautiful and effortless, including this one. This one here, threading the ball between these two defenders at the perfect trajectory. These are NFL level throws. This is why he would have been a first round pick, in my opinion. This is his best trait. Here's one other throw where he threads the needle between two safeties for Kenyon Sadiq up the seam. Is it risky? Yeah. Does he have the arm to hit it? Yeah. Does he have the trust in his guys to go get it? Yeah. There were still some throws I thought he struggled to make. A lot of the stuff outside the hashes, the out routes were places that I saw him struggle in, especially in this USC game, but he did improve throughout the season on these, so I'm not gonna hold it too far against him. I also have mixed feelings about him under pressure, and I think that's the key point that Oregon fans will point out. There are times where I think he freezes. He doesn't really know what to do, and these are young quarterback things. I think with more experience, he should get better. And he did get better. To his credit, there are plays like this where he hits Sadiq with pinpoint accuracy off his back foot while taking a shot. So the flashes of playing well under pressure are there, but he could still get more consistent. The one final thing I really like about Dante Moore is what Will Stein had him doing under center. He would roll out under center, evade pressure. Here he finds his tight end, he hits him in stride. He can execute these NFL type concepts, turning his back to the defense. And I don't know if this will continue without Will Stein, but he does have that experience. I want to take this time to talk about my grading system. I'm going to try to include a rubric in the video now because I think a lot of people in my TikTok comments were like, you rated Dante Moore a 79 overall, like it's a Madden rating. That's not really what it is. I'll put the scale on the screen. The scale there is just how I rate them from a bunch of different categories that are weighted differently depending on their archetype of player. I think I still have the graphic from the Ole Miss video. If I do, it'll be on the screen for you to look at it. But basically the highest grade I've given out to a prospect is an 89, and that was to Ruben Bain Jr. last year. So yeah, Jeremiah Smith, I think I have it like an 87 or an 88. So a 79, almost an 80, is pretty much a first round grade. It's like a borderline first round grade, and I usually only give out 20 to 30 first round grades a year. So it's high praise. Don't see the 79 and think it's his Madden rating. That's not how I grade. My grade for the unit though is an S. This is an S tier room. Dante Moore is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. That's really easy to say. He would have been the second pick in the draft last year. He'll still be a top 10 pick this year in my opinion, maybe top half of the first round, but he'll go there and I can't wait to see what he does in the NFL. The running back room is really good too. It is led by Jordan Davidson, although I would expect to see a semi-even split between him and Dyer Hill. I watched a lot of Oregon tape last year for Emmanuel Pregnon, and I always just kind of assumed that Jordan Davidson was a senior like Noah Whittington was, but no, he was a true freshman in 2025. A 6 foot tall, 235 pound freshman in 2025. Ridiculous. He is terrifying, and I think this could be one of the most exciting backs in college football if he continues to get better. To move like he does at 235 pounds, an absolute unit. He can punch it in at short yardage just like you'd expect. Always picks up an extra couple of yards on every carry, just like you expect from a big running back. But despite him literally being used as a fullback sometimes, what shocked me is that he can get through the hole and take off. This run here made me like Chris Collinsworth when I was watching it. He snags the ankle of his new teammate in Coy Parrish and then shows some true breakaway speed on this run. I really wasn't expecting him to move like this in the open field. I think it has to be highlighted. He can shake tackles, break ankles, he has elite contact balance already, and I would argue for him to be so young and splitting carries last year, he has the chance to be one of the best running backs in the sport. The chance to be. It's exciting to see what we have. Granted, this will be a split backfield, but I think he deserves to be a 1,000-yard rusher, and I think he still could, even on limited touches. He does have his big running back, young running back moments. I think he struggles just to get upfield sometimes, and the vision is still developing. It's kind of demonstrated here, but the sky is the limit for him, and I'm excited to watch him play. Luckily, he's complemented by Dyer Hill. I think he's the perfect complementary back for Davison because he is that faster, lightning in a bottle style of player. He's not small, he's still 200 plus pounds, but his game is built on his speed. He had 600 yards last season, and that was as the third string running back, so you can expect an uptick in production there. He had that huge run against Indiana in the playoff. He also had a really nice run against JMU. Not that Davison doesn't have juice, as I showed, but Dyer Hill is the big play threat. Will Stein used him a lot in the receiving game, only a couple less catches than Noah Whittington had despite less playing time. I think he's a really good running back. I think this backfield is another one of those best in the country caliber, especially with how committed this team is to running the football and how effectively they do it with that offensive line that we'll talk about shortly. My grade for the running back room is an S. I'm really going out on a limb here, and part of it is because of my bias towards backs like Davison. As a former small running back myself, I must say the guys built like Davison are straight up better when they're able to capitalize on it. Not all big running backs play big, but he does, and I think that's important. So I really like this backfield. De'Aaron Hill is the perfect switch up. They are going to be great. Now let's talk about the weapons in the passing game, and they are true weapons. This room is really good. They didn't need a transfer to start, but adding Iverson Hooks gives them a great fourth option, and they have some highly touted freshmen coming in too. The room will be led by true sophomore DeCorian Moore, who played in 11 games last season. He missed a few before the playoffs due to injury, but when he was on the field, he looked really good. They had him lining up at X receiver as a true freshman. They trust him already, and I think he could explode if he stays healthy. He was a guy that I was very mad Texas missed out on in recruiting. Honestly, I thought he was going to be a Longhorn, but we can't exactly say that the choice to go to Oregon was bad because, like I said, they love him already, and it's clear as to why. They really wanted to get the ball in his hands in any way that they could. He caught a lot of screens, lots of quick passes to see what he could do. I don't want to say he was a screen merchant because he's clearly not, but it's a great part of his game. He had some really nice soft hands that can just pluck the ball out of the air. He's not a body catcher. He uses his frame well and is pretty tough at the catch point too. I think that's worth highlighting. He showcased some really nice routes downfield. This touchdown against Rutgers stands out where he twists this safety around by selling outside, then breaks it back in and tracks the ball for a wide open touchdown. He's got some really natural abilities to just make guys miss in the open field too. I think the production for Moore is a bit misleading because this is a really good receiver. Do I think he's already at that Malachi Toney, Cam Coleman, Jeremiah Smith level? No, but you can feel confident with him that he could get there one day if he puts the work in and keeps developing. But then there's Evan Stewart, and he's a really interesting football player. He missed all of last season with a patellar tendon tear, which makes it hard to evaluate him since he hasn't taken the field in a year. But he really did have a breakout in 2024, and after an up-and-down career starting at Texas A&M. He was part of that very memeable Texas A&M #1 recruiting class, and it just didn't fully work out for him there. And it's not entirely his fault, although he does deserve some of the blame for being a bit of a head case early in his career. But he seems to have really matured at Oregon, and he just hit his stride before that injury, and sucks to see that happen. He's one of those slender-built, twitched-up Oregon receivers that's game is built on just being an electric athlete. I mean, how many of those have they had over the years? Jeez. I do think he has that dog in him, though. He might be slender, but his play strength is pretty good. Like, I don't know how he comes down with this. This is an incredible play for any receiver to make, much less one that's only 170 pounds. Needless to say, he's a pretty dynamic playmaker. I still think he has his struggles against physical corners, like there are those natural size limitations, but if he can win with his release and his speed, he won't get touched anyway, so it's one of those things where it's not his game, and that's fine. He is very good downfield. He's excellent at winning with nuance in his routes, like you can see here to add this little stop to freeze the corner, but it's also his speed as he pulls away, and then he's able to adjust to the ball. I think he allows DeCorian Moore to continue to do some of that underneath after the catch stuff, and he can stretch the field. So yeah, Stewart has the chance to be their one, and so does Moore, but we haven't seen him play in a year, and some guys can bounce back just fine, no issues, and I hope that's the case for Stewart, but it's always a concern, and it's worth flagging. Finally, the guy that will be splitting snaps with Iverson Hooks is Jeremiah McClellan, and I think they play similar roles. McClellan really can do it all, though. He is just clean. I think against Washington, he showcased what he can do as a vertical threat, making some incredible plays downfield like you see here, but also this catch that, in my opinion, rule of cool just applies here. And it's one of the wildest things I've seen a college football player do. This should have stood as a catch. I mean, come on, don't take this away from him. He can work the middle of the field. He's got a really natural feel against zone, just getting to the spot that Dante Moore needs him to be. Man, I really liked watching McClellan play. Like, guiltily, I think he can be just as good as the first two guys here, and I don't know if I'm being fooled by limited samples, but he's awesome. This touchdown catch is also insane. He has some of the best hand-eye coordination and ball tracking on the team. That's one thing I'm very confident in saying. I think he'll continue to be clutch for Oregon, and he'll have to make plays down the stretch if they want to accomplish their championship dreams. My grade for this receiver room, though, is an A, and I know a lot of people are going to be sounding off in the comments, how is this not an S? For me, I am wary of injuries, and when a player misses an entire year of football, I can't guarantee that A, they're going to come back and not get re-injured. That just isn't a guarantee. And also, I can't guarantee that they're going to come back and be the exact same player right off the bat that they were when they haven't played the sport in a year. So I think it's very fair to think about with Evan Stewart. And then when you get past him, yeah, you have Iverson Hooks, you have Jeremiah McClellan, you have DeCorian Moore. But that brings me to my next complaint about this room. They're all the same build. And maybe that's just a me thing, like how I would build a roster. They don't have a guy like over 200 pounds, I don't think. They don't have a receiver taller than 6'1" or 6 foot. And not that that's a terrible thing, like that's fine, but I just don't see a guy in this receiver room that's gonna be someone that Dante Moore can just chuck it up and pray that they come down with it, like that 6'4", 220 pound out-muscle you guy. They don't really have that. So that takes me to my next point though, because they do have that in their tight end room with Jamari Johnson. Oregon has the best tight end in the country. Sorry, Trey'Dez Green, you are a firm 2, but the crown goes to Jamari Johnson. I thought he was just as good as Sadiq was, and now he has the chance to be the guy. Now, he is not Sadiq. They're not the same player at all. Johnson is much more of the prototypical tight end. He's 6'5", over 250 pounds, strong as an ox, is a great pass catcher. He's not the same level as athlete as Sadiq was, but he's more well-rounded in my opinion. And I think Sadiq was a good blocker. Like, don't get me wrong, I've said that before. But that 255-pound frame really makes a difference in the end of the day. This offense is designed for the tight ends. I don't know if that will still apply the way it did when Will Stein was holding the play sheet, but the fundamentals shouldn't change, and Johnson's talent will force these coaches to give him chances. He can make things happen after the catch. He's not slow at all. He pinballs off of tacklers and has really good balance. He's going to feast this season, man. I think he does help solve that problem of who's the big body guy in the offense. Well, give him some more contested targets, because I don't think he had as many as he could have. The problem with Jamari Johnson is that I don't think he has the splash plays that are going to turn heads. He's not going to be the type of darling that Sadiq was for broadcasters to go crazy over. He's not going to go out and score 12 touchdowns like Trey'Dez Green will. He's not going to run after the catch like Terrence Carter will, but just stay consistent with him. Turn on his tape. Don't forget about him, stay with the process, and you will see why I'm gassing him up this way. Jamari Johnson is elite. Don't get it twisted. I think he's the key to unlocking this offense, and this is an S-tier unit for me. Nothing else needs to be said. We'll close out the offense with the offensive line. This unit up front really has the power to control Oregon's season. They returned 2 starters in the interior, and that's probably for the best, since Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein are off to the NFL. While it does suck to lose Emmanuel Pregnown, I thought Iapani Laolo and Dave Luley were the other 2 best on the line. And I know for a fact I'm going to butcher those names, just stay with me, please. Laulu was an All-American center last year, and I think that's fair. I think that's well-deserved. I thought maybe he could have declared for the draft too, but in the modern age of college football, why not play another year and make some money when you get older and stronger? I think what stands out about him is how athletic he is. He moves really well for a guy that is 330 pounds. He carries that weight better than most at his size. He can get in front to lead block, but it also helps with his first step. I think he wins through that quite a bit. He's a really good puller. If you're a defensive end, this is not the guy you want throwing a shoulder into you. And if you're a linebacker, you better move out the way. I think he's really good on double teams. On duo, you can see him here, and the next guy we'll talk about, just clear people out together. It's no wonder they had such a productive backfield, because when you put these super talented backs behind the power of this line, it's a recipe for success. Dave Luley is the other returning starter, and we've already watched them work together on a few clips now, but I'll try to highlight Luley on his own. I think he's very strong in pass pro. I haven't mentioned this yet, but I honestly don't think Oregon gave up a ton of interior pressure. I thought these 3 typically communicated well. They held their ground. They dropped a good anchor. I don't think he's outmatched too often. Similar to Laulu, he is very good in space, super athletic. He'll get out there and clear the way. I mean, if I'm a running back, I'm just going to put my hand on his pads and start following. Here's a really nice rep on a double team to seal the first threat and then take the second level and seal that off too. Now, is he as good as Pregnon or Lalulu? No. I think the Indiana game wasn't the prettiest either time, but let's be real. What offensive line didn't struggle with that team? So I'll cut him some slack there. At left tackle, it looks like it's going to be Fox Crater, and he has a little bit of experience as a redshirt freshman last year, starting against USC and playing in the Peach Bowl. Now, he did switch in and out with Isaiah World, but he played a lot in those games. In that USC game, he looked good. They didn't ask a ton of him. They rolled away from his side most of the time, but they did run at him, and he does a nice job here, sealing, and honestly, I think he took advantage of his opportunity by playing with an attitude. This is another rep. It's very similar. I actually think as a run blocker, there's a good amount to look forward to based on the tape. As much as I dog on Harkey and World, they are NFL players now, so it is a lot to replace. But for me, the bar is not that high, so you hope you can at least be on par with that. They were getting the ball out fast this game, but he looked fine in pass pro. I don't think there's a lot to judge on here, especially considering he was a redshirt freshman, so there's a ton of potential for improvement. He will definitely need to improve his technique. I thought he looked a little stiff, kind of stands straight up. You can see the initial knockback, but I will say it one last time. First start, high stakes game. I thought he handled himself really well. The final projected starter who's been on the team for a few years now is Kawika Rogers. He's appeared in multiple games every year, mainly on special teams, and if I'm going to be completely candid with you, I did not have the time to go and track down what exact special team snaps he's played over the past 2 years, so no tape on him, unfortunately. I'm going to give this unit an A. You have a really good duo of interior starters, but the other positions are kind of a question mark. I don't think this line will take a step back, but I also don't know if I can forecast a step forward here. I think they'll be good. Replacing 2 tackles, even if they weren't the greatest, but they are NFL starters, that's nothing easy to do. And also replacing Emmanuel Pregnon, who's going to be a good NFL guard, that's a lot to replace. So I think that they handled it as well as they could, and they still have 2 really good guys coming back on the interior, which is kind of what raises this to an A for me. To talk about the defense, I have to start by acknowledging how good this defensive line is. When I think of Oregon football as someone who grew up in California, trenches are not what comes to mind. That could not be further from the truth now. This defensive line is scary, and I'll show you why they're at least top 2 in the country, but they are for sure the deepest in the country. The first players I'll talk about are their starting edge rushers with Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uiagalelei, both names that I will butcher throughout this segment. We'll get into the scheme later. Technically, Tuioti is the jack. He's kind of an outside linebacker, but for the sake of this video, he's a defensive end. I do find it interesting though that he is that jack player and not Mateo, considering he's 6'2", 262 pounds. He has that compact, sawed-off build, and he is a very good college edge defender. The deficiencies for me though are pretty clear. I'll get that out of the way. It's the overall athletic profile. He is not long. He does not have top-tier lateral agility. He is not very fast. But oh man, can he set the edge and just destroy blockers. He's one of the best run defending ends in the sport. This is the tone setter for me on the defensive line. He's a coach's kid, he plays technically sound, he's a really smart player, and he is giving 110% effort on every play. You can watch here, he takes on pullers like a grown man. He's a stonewall whenever someone tries to take him on. I think he's built exactly like Ruben Bain was, and I'm not saying he's Ruben Bain at all, but playstyle wise, there are some similarities here. As a pass rusher, he's a fantastic bull rusher, but that's about it. He's trying to develop a bag, but I think he just lacks the twitch. He'll collapse the pocket if you give him time, so I don't think he's a bad rusher, but that skill is saved for the next edge guy that we'll talk about. They have him playing off ball sometimes as a true linebacker, and I think he's a good tackler, but it's just his quickness isn't on par with some other players like this. And while this might hold him back for the NFL, I still think he's one of the best at his position as a college player, and he is a great cornerstone for this defensive line. Another one of the best at his position is Mateo Uiagalelei, and yes, this is the infamous DJU's brother. Florida State fans, turn away. Don't watch the video right now. I'm not trying to traumatize you, but yeah, there is another Uiagalelei out there. I'll open up with this to show Mateo's potential as he gets a strip sack by literally just ripping the ball out of the quarterback's hands. This is one of the most electric plays on defense from last season, dude. I mean, just the stuff you'll live for if you like defense. He, unlike his teammate, is not slow. You can see how fast he is on this play, and I was shocked to learn that he is 6'4", 265 pounds. I thought he was one of these 6'3", 245-pound guys. To move like this at 260 is insane. He will blow up pullers just like his teammate does. He is so strong. Now, do I think he holds the point as well as Tuioti does? No, but he's still really good at it. If you want to see another dynamic play, here's another forced fumble against USC. Of all the players I've watched in my preview series, he might be my biggest surprise. I was just not aware of his game, and I really don't know why. Like, truly, I don't know why I'm so late to the game here with him, but I'm glad I found him. He does the dirty work really well too. You can see the extension here, just great technique for playing the run as an edge player. I would still like to see him play a stand-up role more. Like, I get he's really good at what he does, but I'd kind of like to see him in that jack role, more of the attacking style, play a little off ball. I think he could be good at it. What separates him from the rest is the fact that he can also rush the passer at a really high level. He gets constant pressure. The only team I think that held him really in check was Indiana, and I would expect more production from him this year. So yeah, just a dynamic edge rush duo. These two guys are some of the best in the sport, and they are joined by an interior duo that is also one of the best in the country. To get to the interior, we have to start off with transfer portal legend, Bear Alexander. Not many can pull this off, but he can. He's had a long career, up and down, but dude, he had a really good 2025. I think he has one of the best first steps of any defensive tackle in the game. It's been that way forever, going back to his recruiting days in high school. He is a very good run stuffer. I think that's the best aspect of his game. You can watch here, he keeps his eyes in the backfield and hits a really nice move and showcases the strength. He has a nice strong punch here, just locks his arms in the blocker's pads and then throws him to the side. He has reps where he flashes everything you need to see from an elite D tackle. You can see him here take on 2 blockers at once, one with each hand, but he keeps his eyes in the backfield and he sheds them both to jump in and almost make a tackle here. Dude, he is really good when he wants to be. I thought he had his best game rushing the passer against USC. I think there's potential here, just really good motor, balance, speed. He forces Mayaba out of the pocket. On this one, you can see him long arm this guard right back into Mayaba's lap, and he ends up almost forcing an interception. This won't show up on the stat sheet, but it will on the tape, and while he's not elite as a rusher, I think he has a long ways to go with consistency there. There are flashes for him. So yeah, I really like Bear Alexander. I'll admit it, I think he's in for another great year, and it'll be interesting to see what my draft grades end up looking like on him if he can get a little more consistent. And it's kind of a similar story for his teammate in Amari Washington. Washington plays more of the nose tackle role, much less versatile than Alexander is, but he will still take reps all over. I thought it was very smart for Washington to return to school. He needs a lot more refinement, but the potential of this player is sky high. If we're talking about ceiling, it might be even higher than Alexander's, and that's saying a lot. For his size, he is just a crazy athlete. Here's an example of what I talked about where he lines up as that 5 technique, not a nose tackle. This is why I don't really think of him as that true nose. Like, you didn't see Caden McDonald rotating and playing defensive end like he does sometimes, although I do think his potential is highest at nose. As a pass rusher, he's fine. There's some quick hand movements that he shows off here, but you're not going to get a ton out of him in this area. He has 1.5 career sacks, but he's 6'3", 330 pounds, so you want him to stop the run and maybe clog up the middle passing lane every now and then if possible. He will fight through double teams. He's immensely strong. I think a lot of his success just comes from effort and motor right now rather than technique, but that's why he has another year, so he can refine that and hopefully play himself into the first round based on some of these traits. The final guy we'll talk about on the defensive line is Nasir Wyatt. Wyatt's a rotational guy, and honestly, I do think he'll be more of a factor next year when Mateo and Tuioti are gone, but he'll still have an impact this year. He's built like a linebacker, 6'2", 230 pounds, so he does play that jack role. There's not a ton of tape on him, but he is a freaky athlete. This play against Indiana is really nice. He showcases some insane bend here, and he was doing this as a true freshman against the eventual national champion, so potential is very high. I think you'll hear his name called a lot if he can get on the field. My grade for this defensive line is an S. I think they are top 2, maybe top 1 in the country. There's only one other team that I feel like really has the argument to be over them, but if we're talking pure depth, they can just rotate and rotate and rotate, and we'll talk about that in the scheme section. They have guys all over the place, so I'm very confident in my S tier grade for this unit. I won't spend a ton of time on the linebackers, and then I'll make a little sense when we get to the scheme, but it's also, there's not a ton here. Jerry Mixon and Devin Jackson are the projected starters, and there's a decent amount of tape on Jerry Mixon. He had good production last year, including a pick 6. I like him. I think he's good. I think he's much better at dropping back than I expected him to be, since he is built like that 6'2", 240 pound thumper, but he shows some really nice awareness on plays like this. Here's one in the same game where he almost gets an interception. He will be the guy this year, and there's some decent shoes to fill from Bryce Betcher, but he's already just as good, if not better, than Betcher was against the pass. He is a solid tackler, typically closes well, wraps up. I think he's a good player. There's not a lot to nitpick here, but there's not a lot where I'm like, oh shit, we got a dude. Now his coverage is great, I'll admit that, but I'm not at the level to say that he's one of the best in the conference, but I think he could play his way there. Next to him will be Devin Jackson, and I got to watch him in limited snaps, and I really couldn't figure him out as a player. He appeared in all 14 games, but he only made 1 start. He had 41 tackles, so there's not no production here. Like, he had a decent season, but there's no sacks, no picks, no forced fumbles, just kind of a do-your-job type linebacker, and he does that job well. I do like the duo though. If you combine the coverage skills of Mixon with just the down-to-down reliability of Devin Jackson, I think you have a solid group here. But the thing for them is that this defensive line and safeties are so good that they really don't have to do a ton, and I think that'll make them maybe look better than they are. Because of those reasons though, my grade for this unit is a B. I think they're good. I think there's potential for this to maybe be an A, but right now I just don't see enough standing out to raise that for me. And finally, let's talk about the secondary, and who else could we kick this off with other than Brandon Finney Jr., the freshman all-star at corner. He is really good, dude, and I'm sorry that the Big Ten has to deal with him for 2 more years. A message to my followers on TikTok. So many of you have been asking for Brandon Finney Jr. I don't review true freshmen on there. I only review draft-eligible players. But in this video, we'll have plenty of time to talk about Brandon Finney. So sit down, grab your popcorn, and enjoy this next minute or two of me glazing Brandon Finney Jr. To start off, he is physical, almost too much so. That stands out as the biggest thing he needs to work on is just refinement, because some of these plays, they're just not gonna fly in the future. To his credit though, he is locked down, like a true lockdown corner. He and DJ Pickett will get compared, and I think it's rightful. I think they were the 2 best freshman corners last season, although honorable mention to Grayson Littleton. The interception here to undercut this route is just so good, dude. He's gonna drop back and funnel this receiver to the outside, but he's athletic enough to essentially mirror the entire route and then jump in at the last second to pick this ball off. Then there's this one later in the game, which shows his feel for playing the position as a young player. It's already top notch. He's gonna watch the quarterback's eyes the whole time and just drop right back into the passing lane and pick off this ball. Not only can he cover though, he can stop the run. And I don't mean just tackle, I mean stop the run. He plays with a linebacker mentality when it comes to getting in the box and getting physical. I could show you a cut up of him tackling all day long, and I think you guys would honestly want to watch it. I mean, it's great. but we gotta move on to something else. My last point with Brandon Finney is that he is a playmaker. We saw the interceptions earlier, but watch this fumble recovery too. I mean, you cannot come up with a better word for Brandon Finney Jr. than playmaker. There's no other way to put it for me. So yeah, the outsides of the field are going to be in great hands with Brandon Finney Jr. patrolling, and the best is, Oregon fans, you have 2 more years of this, so cherish it. Opposite of Brandon Finney is Ife Obadegwu. I thought he had a pretty good year last season. 24 tackles, 1 interception, which you'll get to see in a second. He was a redshirt freshman, so a young player just like Finney, and as you'd imagine, you'll probably get 2 more years out of him. This interception he had against USC is really impressive. I think he has good reaction time, great ball skills. He just kind of drifts perfectly underneath to pick off the underthrown ball. Do I think he's the player Finney is? No. But do I think he's a really talented CB2 with a lot of potential yet to be unlocked? Yes. Like Finney though, I think he's really physical. He does a good job of sticking in the receiver's hip pocket and then just staying with the rep. I don't know, he's someone that I still need to watch a little bit more of, but I did like what I saw. Like there's nothing here that stands out as, oh, he got burnt, or oh, they might be in trouble with him. I think he's a really solid player. The only other secondary guy that I'll talk about is safety Aaron Flowers, just because I wasn't able to get around and watch the other returning players in the roster who are more depth pieces, and I typically like to actually use scrutiny when watching, and I just can't do that for them. I thought Aaron Flowers was pretty good. A lot of my notes were just Aaron Flowers, great play. Now granted, most of these were against the run, and from what I understand, I don't think him against the run was the issue. Here's a nice play where he just sticks the running back at the line of scrimmage. In a condensed area, I think he's great. I don't worry about his physicality or his ability to diagnose the run at all. I'll show you one more tackling highlight too. I thought he was a really nice open field tackler, just breaking down, preventing this play from getting any worse. I really like him back here as that deep safety, last line of defense. He does a really good job. Now, did he get cooked a bit against Indiana? Yeah, but like it happens, man. It also happens when you match up a safety on Omar Cooper Jr. That's kind of a disaster waiting to happen. So I like Flowers. I don't think he's insane, but I think he's a good player, and I think Oregon fans are right to criticize his coverage skills, but as a run defender, he's a great run defending safety, so I think you had to give him some credit there. My grade for the secondary is an A, and I'm going with an A instead of an S because I do just have some overall question marks. Brandon Finney is such a good player that like his side of the field you can just take away. Good, we're good there. But when you look at the other side of the field, I think Ife Obadegwu is a great player, like in his own regard, great, and that's what keeps this an A for me. You have Flowers, who's also pretty solid, but then you bring in Parrish, who it's like, okay, we have some good and bad here. Hopefully he can get back to being a great player. And then they brought in the nickel Carl Williams from Baylor, and I'm just like, I don't know anything about him. So I kind of have to give this room an A. I can't raise it to an S. However, at the end of the year, we're sitting back and I look like an idiot. It makes total sense. My grade for the defense as a whole, though, is an S. There aren't many question marks to me when you take them as a sum of their parts, and I think a lot of that comes from the defensive line. I highly value defensive line when it comes to overall defensive success. If your defensive line is an S tier and is one of the best in the country like they are, chances are the rest of your team will kind of fall into line with that. So easy S for me with this defense. Really good unit. They're one of the best in the sport. Now, we finally get to the scheme, and I'm gonna go ahead and start off with the offense since I do think this is where more of the changes could happen. Not that I think the overall things I'm gonna show you today will change, but the style of play calling, the situational play calling, that might change when you get a new guy with the play sheet. The first place things could be different though is the personnel. They ran a lot of 12 and 22 personnel. They will get running backs and tight ends on the field. During the games when Corian Moore was hurt, they did this like an abnormal amount for a college football team. They don't run traditional 12 personnel though, although they certainly can, but they basically use Sadiq as a big receiver like you see him lined up here. Here you have an empty set, which is typically 5 wide or maybe 11 personnel, but they are in 21 personnel, 2 backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end. Just the mind of Will Stein, man. He loves getting bigger players on the field. Here's another fun formation they run a lot of, 21 personnel, but they basically use the second running back as kind of like a fullback lined up directly next to the quarterback. They are really creative with how they get their guys on the field. Stein really liked to use these balance formations too. This is a staple of the offense. Here we go under center. We get 2 tight ends on either side, 2 wide receivers on either side, just balancing counts. You will occasionally get the pony package too. Like here we see 2 backs next to Dante Moore in the gun. They really like 21 personnel. They run it more than any team that we've looked at so far, and probably any of the other teams we're gonna look at too. They will run trips when they want to stretch the field. Will Stein explained this offense as a spread offense with pro-style personnel, and sometimes I agree with him, but they play heavy and condense much more than you'd expect from a so-called spread offense. A key piece of this offense is the use of stack formations and bunch sets, kind of like we talked about with Miami. Here you see them in stacks on either side of the field where they try to simply get the ball to Corian Moore. Here on 1st and 10, we get that kind of fullback style player on the field with a receiver stack, and it turns into a design rollout to hit Jeremiah McClellan. This kind of brings together all the things we just talked about. Final thing we talk about before we get to plays is the use of pre-snap motion. Half the time they don't line up in what they're going to run, and you see them motion into this bunch as they snap the ball here, and we freeze this corner long enough to get a quick pass off like this. So yeah, I just spent an entire page of notes showing you formations, and bro, there are like 20 more that I could have shown you. This is one of the most creative offenses in the game right now. And this one here is how I'll kick off the play design and play calling section, because we get a spread out bunch with 21 personnel, and it looks like we're going to run jet GY counter. Their overall run game though is fairly balanced. I think it's a good mix of duo, inside zone, wide zone, with the occasional switch up like you just got to see there with that modified counter play. I think they are lucky to have an offensive line that can do all these styles of run effectively. They can get on the move like you see here. This one actually creates the perfect lane for Davison, but he doesn't take it, kind of like we talked about earlier. I think ISO and duo are where they're at their best though, especially last year with Emmanuel Pregnon. They're just so big and so strong that if they get a good first step on you and set up these double teams, it is really hard to stop. Will Stein like to call these pop plays in short yardage, where they get the H-back fullback of the ball rather than the running back lined up behind more, and they basically block this like inside zone. It's not crazy, but given the motion and the fact that Dante Moore is under center, this is a deceptive play, and they run a lot of it, and it kind of, once again, brings together all the things we talked about earlier. Occasionally, they'll dial up quarterback option. They don't run it all the time, and Moore doesn't get a ton of these, but he's a good enough athlete for it to be an effective changeup, and that's pretty much how they use it. They also use screens as an extension of the run game, of course, but it's also their check every time. They will check into screens if they like the look. If there's a man that they think they can beat, chances are they have a check for it, and Stein has talked about this many times before. They love using the screen game when guys are out of position. To introduce their passing game, I will say that they are not a heavy RPO team. They do sprinkle it in, they do use it, but I don't think it's the bread and butter of what Oregon wants to do, unlike some of the other teams we've talked about this year. I'm showing you a simple one here, but they're not like Indiana where they've got hundreds of these in the books. What I like about Will Stein's offense is that it feels like every play gives Dante Moore a check down, showcased here. No matter how they stretch the field, there will be an option to get the ball out fast, and they will use the quick game. The true staple of the Will Stein offense, though, is using the tight end. Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson were 2nd and 4th on the team in catches last year, and yes, I get it, they were heavily banged up at receiver, but go back to 2024, Terrence Ferguson had over 40 catches, and I think Sadiq was like 5th on the team in receptions. They dial up a ton of plays here. I think I showed this one earlier, but they send these tight ends up the seam and basically tell them to go out and find holes in zones, and they just trust Dante Moore to deliver it on time and accurately. They run a lot of these scissors concepts where you'll get a corner and a post crossing each other. Surprise, surprise, they run this with their tight ends. For explosive plays, they chase them very strategically though. They're not hunting chunk plays every 3 snaps, although it does seem that way because when they play against lesser competition, most of their chunk plays tend to work, but against the better teams, they were very methodical. One of the ways they chase explosives though is actually under center in the play action game. That's why this offense is considered pro style. There are definitely pro style elements here. You'll see another scissors concept trying to attack downfield, but Moore makes the smart play to tuck it and run. Here's one where it looks like we get double posts from Johnson and McClellan, and then Sadiq is just going to leak out here uncovered. This is combining a lot of what we talked about. Under center, strategic shots, design plays to the tight end. Those are the heavy staples of this passing game. While not under center here, they're in that pistol set with the 2 backs. They run a lot of flood concepts off of play action where basically they get everyone flowing in one direction and creating levels on the field. Here Dante Moore tries to dump it off and we see the rare Jamari Johnson drop. Hopefully that brief explanation gives you a good idea of what Oregon wants to do on offense. And if you're confused, yeah, so am I. They run everything in the books. Like I said, I don't know if that'll change with Will Stein gone, but you can assume that they're gonna have a ton of creative stuff that they can dial up. And it's a really fun offense to watch, man. I love to tune into Oregon games. For the defense, I think they are much less in danger of any regression here or any serious change because it is still Dan Lanning's system, and Dan Lanning got that system from Nick Saban and Kirby Smart while working with them. Their base personnel is a 4-2-5 or a 3-3-5, depending on what you want to consider the jack player, which of course we'll talk about, but I'm not going to go too in depth on the history of this scheme since it is very similar to the Georgia defense, and that'll be coming up soon. There are 2 primary things to highlight though, the mint front and their unique coverage style. We'll start off with the front since that's where it all begins, and honestly it isn't too difficult to explain. The term mint will get thrown around a lot here. It basically means the same thing as a tight front, where the tight front is shown on tape here. The mint front uses a nose tackle head up on the center, 2 4-eyed defensive ends. Oregon would rotate these guys a lot, so there isn't a set lineup of players, but they will have this alignment. The term was coined under Nick Saban though. It basically takes this tight front and adds a walked up linebacker edge rusher hybrid called the jack, and we've talked about this before many times in this series, starting off with the Ole Miss video. On the field now is their starting group though. These are the studs, with Tuioti lined up as the jack. He plays this role perfectly, as we talked about earlier. Then the linebackers cover up the gaps, and if you have the personnel, you can get the right matchups. You can bring a safety or a nickel down on the opposite edge, and you've basically eliminated the run game. This front is really good for stopping the run because you have every gap accounted for. The inside shade from the end occupies the interior running lanes, and it leaves your linebackers free to read and react. The jack player can shut down the edge on his side, and then you have this outside linebacker scrape the other side, and you've taken away everything you need to. You can play this alignment in an infinite amount of ways though. You can see here this is more of that tight front unless you want to count Betcher as the jack, but they have the personnel on the field to play the mint if they want to, since Tuioti is lined up at Mike. While I don't see this too often, he can do it, and you can see the success yet again. They will also play the 5-0-5 alignment like we talked about in the A&M video, where it gives them the ability to attack you from all the interior gaps with their linebackers and safeties. Here they have the jack on a loop, and he can come through this gap open, since when you have the linebacker drop back, there's no immediate threat for this guard, and you have an average guard without good play awareness, this is what you get. Like I said earlier though, they'll rotate their guys and switch up positions. Here you can watch Bear Alexander lined up at 5 tech and then Uyunglele at 3 tech. It's not typical, but this defense really keys in on matchups, and they want to take advantage, and they're willing to take some risks on the way they line up. They don't blitz a ton. When they do, it's typically just rushing 5, bringing a linebacker or a safety. Here's an example of them rushing 5, but they don't run a lot of simulated pressures. They don't overload your protection, but they can do this because the guys we talked about earlier. They can generate pressure with just 4 or 5. One of the reasons they can do all of this though, and why it's so effective, is because of the middle field safety and what they ask him to do. Dylan Thieneman was a football savant at this role. He was built for it. And the hope is that Parrish can be that too. And honestly, this might be the most fun position to play in the sport. I don't know Dan Lanning's exact term for this player, so I'm just going to continue to call him the hole player, even though he's very similar to Nick Saban's rat term, just that middle of the field surveyor whose job is to find the cheese, as Saban says. I've also heard this called the star, so Oregon fans, let me know in the comments if you know the exact term for this. They run a 3-safety defense though, and this player is the 3rd safety. He's the hole player. He really has to be a cross between a linebacker and a safety. He will typically be a 3 fit, and what that means is that he'll align dependent upon the 3rd player. We can count this here as 1, 2, 3, and that's where he's aligned, on the 3. Here we can count the threats, 1, 2, 3, and he's lined up over the back. Now this is oversimplifying it, but you get the general idea for how this hole player lines up. His job is to be cerebral, sniff out plays, and shut them down, and when you're as good as that at Thieneman was, that's how you have a defense this good. Now because of this player's alignment, it makes it very easy to run Tampa 2 coverage, and they do, a lot. The Tampa player, usually a middle linebacker, but here it's the hole player, is designed to take away the seam. No immediate threat vertical, take underneath, vertical threat, run with them. This really was invented to solve the glaring weakness of cover 2 when you're able to split these safeties through a seam, and it kind of solves some of the weaknesses of cover 3 as well, because you have this player like basically being a 3rd safety deep, but not really, and they align him perfectly to do both. If you have the athletes to run it, it's a fantastic coverage, and most teams don't have that, but Oregon does. If we pause this play here, it's a really good picture for it. We get 2 safeties deep, the shallow defenders, and the Tampa player is kind of that bridge between the two. They don't only run this though. Here you'll see they run some cover 4. The key thing is that they are a zone heavy team. They don't play a ton of man coverage from the tape I watched. When they blitz though, that's typically when you'll see them man up. They don't do a lot of the replacement fire zone type stuff. If they want to bring pressure, they're going to trust their guys to cover. Now they can do all that because of who they have covering. I mean, we talked about Brandon Finney earlier, but with the context of everything, I thought it might be worth taking another look at what he and all the other Oregon DBs do in this scheme. They are able to roam the shallow areas of the field. I think they are kind of that bend, don't break system. If you're going to score on them, you got to be comfortable walking it down just like this. But there's a lot of times where even this is completely covered. They are very effective at just being where they need to be in coverage. I showed this earlier for Brandon Finney, but just watch the eyes here. He's going to feel this out, drop back, and snag the interception. Here's a perfect example of where that hole player just feels out the play, races down to make the tackle even around the ref. Yes, the coverage itself is relatively simple, but it works well when you have the guys in coverage and the tacklers to shut down the shallow areas. So the defense to me is driven by 2 primary things. It's the mint front, it's how they line up to stop the run, and then it's that hole player, that Tampa 2 player, the 3rd safety on the field, who's going to be the rat and just sniff out and shut down plays. Now that we've gone through the roster and the scheme, we can finally talk about their schedule. And there's some decent amount of things to cover here, but we'll get straight into it with Boise State. Oregon's out of conference actually has some decent games on paper. Boise is one of the better teams in the G5/G6, and I think it could be interesting for the first half, but ultimately Oregon does end up winning. Then they go on the road to Oklahoma State though, and this will be fun. They destroyed them last time they played, but in the first year under Eric Morris with Drew Mestemaker, I don't know if this will be the case. I think Oregon wins, don't get me wrong. I I think it's way too early for Mestamaker and Morris to make a splash like this, but that stadium can get rocking, and I think there might be some early splash plays for Oklahoma State where they might scare them a little bit, but then Oregon ends up winning like 40-21 or something. Then they have Portland State, that's another win. Then we have a game that I might actually be going to in USC at Oregon in the Coliseum, and this one should be interesting. I think Oregon wins yet again. This is a do or die time though for Lincoln Riley. I think that he has to win this game, honestly, if he wants to keep his job and continue to be successful at USC, but their schedule is brutal, and I think this is one of the ones that they actually have a chance at winning, so would it shock me if Oregon lost to USC based on the circumstances? No, but I don't think they do. After the road game in LA, UCLA gets to come up and play in Eugene, and yeah, that's another win for the Ducks. And then there's the Nebraska game, and this would be interesting if Dylan Raiola was playing after what he said recently, but he's not, so there's no real drama in this one. It's just an ass kicking from Oregon. And then they go on the road to Illinois, and Illinois is one of those Big Ten teams that the Big Ten likes to flaunt. I think the matchup between them and Tennessee in the bowl game last year was perfect because they're the exact same team. They're good enough to be 8-4, 9-3 every year, give the teams in the conference a ranked win, but they're never great enough to actually have a threat at beating the top teams, and I think that stands here. Then they get a come-down game against Northwestern at home, and once again, we get into even year Northwestern. You never know, they could be good, but yeah, that's another win for Oregon. And then they go to Columbus to play Ohio State at the Shoe, and honestly, I think this is their first loss of the season. I don't think it's bad. Like, I think this is really a coin flip game. They beat Ohio State in Eugene 2 years ago. Ohio State destroyed them in the Rose Bowl. They're kind of even. This is a very toe-to-toe type of matchup for me, and I don't think it would shock me if either team won, but I just think Ohio State gets it done at home. They've already picked up a loss at this point, but this is one we'll break down for sure. And then they get Michigan at home, and this is not easy, especially after going on the road to Ohio State, but I do think they beat Michigan. I think that this team could maybe give them a run for their money, especially in the beginning, because you're gonna be tired from the travel. If they picked up a loss, they might start out slow, and Michigan is the type of team that, like, they'll take advantage of you if you start out slow, but at the end of the day, I just don't think they have what it takes. And then they get at Michigan State, and that's kind of a trap game for me. It's a lot of travel, it's two physical teams back-to-back before, cold, new coach, maybe this team starts to hit a stride. This is giving the Iowa game from last year where they barely squeezed out a win. Iowa's much better, but the circumstances are similar, and it wouldn't surprise me if Michigan State actually gave them a run for their money, but I do think Oregon wins. And then they close out at home against Washington in one of the more underrated rivalries in the sport, especially in recent years. They've had some close games, but I do think this is another win for Oregon, especially at home, and they end up going 11-1. At 11-1, I don't know how tiebreakers work. I do think it'll be Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State fighting for that spot in the Big Ten Championship. We'll see what happens there. I do think Oregon could very well make it, like I said, depending on the tiebreakers. 11-1 is a fantastic season for Oregon, though. You will be back in the college football playoff for sure. You'll probably be playing a game at home in Eugene yet again. And I'm excited to see what Dan Lanning can do. I think there's a lot of potential for this team. I had them in my top 4. I mentioned earlier that I was actually debating putting them at 1. Like, I really believe in Dante Moore. I believe in what they're bringing back, especially on that defensive line. And I do believe in Dan Lanning. I think he's a good coach. We'll see what happens with your team, but Ducks fans, if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button. The little football will appear when you do it. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and send this video to a friend. It helps a lot when you share this. Our goal is 1,000 subscribers before the start of the season. We'll see if we get there. We still have a few more teams to cover, and maybe something could happen with those, but hopefully you guys will subscribe and share this video. Thanks for all the support so far. It's been awesome, and I can't wait to make the next one.